Hi, I'm Jane Muller from GrowCom, Queensland's Fruit and Vegetable Industry Association. This webinar is part of GrowCom's Whatever the Weather program. This is a natural disaster preparedness initiative for Queensland's horticultural growers. Our program's been funded by the Australian Government through the Department of Industry and Science. In this webinar, we're going to talk about assessing or possibly reassessing the climate risks that may be relevant for your farm business. We're also going to look through some of the handy information sources that are available to help you with that climate risk assessment process. In one of our earlier webinars, we talked about using a prevent, prepare, respond and recover framework to help your farm business take a more proactive approach to disaster risk management. The prevent, prepare, respond, recover process actually begins with assessing your climate risks that are relevant to your business. And the question I have is, are you on autopilot when it comes to thinking about climate risks that you might face? We're encouraging growers to have a bit of a check back in on their assumptions about the climate risks that might be relevant to them. And there's 3 steps that we're going to go through today to talk about that. We're going to look at what we need to do to take stock of the climate risks that you know you're exposed to on your property. We're going to look at how the sorts of things that you might need to do to consider what might be new or emerging risks to your business. And we're also going to have a little bit of a look at some of the more up-to-date information that's available to growers now around seasonal forecasts. So the first step in our climate risk assessment is to just really identify what's been your historical exposure to climate risks on your property. Most growers have been on their property for quite a while, or may have a long family history associated with the property, or have done a lot of talking with neighbours to really gauge what sort of things have happened in the area in the past. So by thinking through the sorts of weather events that have happened on the farm in the past helps you understand what those kind of known risks are. And the sorts of things that you need to be thinking about is, what sort of weather events and what sort of climate risks are relevant for this particular area. So that could be around cyclones, that could be around severe storms with heavy rain or damaging wind or hail or that sort of thing. Whether your area tends to get a lot of intense rainfall and flooding, whether storm surge is an issue for your property. Obviously more broadly, what's the likelihood of heat waves, of drought conditions, and even bushfire is an issue that I've been reminded to remind people about. People are highly aware of the fact that the climate's really variable, and what happens one year isn't always a very good indication of what's going to happen the next. So by doing that sort of little snapshot and that check-in on what those sort of historical climate events have been, gives you that sort of really baseline level of, these are the climate risks that we know about for this property. The next really important part of reassessing your climate risk is to think about risks that might be emerging or new risks that might be emerging for your property. One of the important messages that we've heard from climate scientists is that past climate record may not be a very good guide to the sort of climate conditions that we might be needing to expect in the future. Climate modelling and climate projections are pointing to the fact that there are new and emerging climate risks in Australia, in Queensland and in our horticultural production regions. The CSIRO and the Bureau of Met regularly release reports on recent climate trends and the projections that have been made for future climate. It's really worth keeping an eye out for those reports when they're released. They seem to release a summary report every year or two, and we do encourage growers to go and check out those reports and have a really good read through. So let's just sort of check in on what some of the most recent reports from the CSIRO and the Bureau of Met are telling us. The first thing is that general trend of warming. Associated with that is the fact that we should be expecting more extreme heat days, possibly longer heat wave conditions, and probably less extreme cold events. The monsoonal rains in northern Australia are have an established trend of increasing. Rainfall variability is apparently set to become even more variable. The climate scientists suggest that, or indicate that, we should be expecting longer dry spells, less rainfall overall, but that rainfall events are going to be coming in these kind of really intense downpours. So the whole sort of rainfall pattern is definitely changing. And that's a really important management issue for our industry. The story that seems to be coming out around cyclones is that the climate scientists are indicating that the projections are indicating that the number of cyclones that we experience in Queensland per year will probably stay about the same, or possibly will get fewer, but that the proportion of cyclones that are in that extreme category of Category 4 or Category 5 are likely to increase. So we may get about the same or possibly fewer cyclones, but the ones that we get are likely to be the really bad ones. So the main point around assessing the emerging climate risks that may be relevant to your business is to really find trusted sources of information and keep yourself informed. I've got a number of websites on the slides there of good places to go to access good information about climate projections and general future climate information. Some horticultural industry organisations over the last year have done some customised research on climate risks for their particular industries. I know there's reports available in the vegetable industry and in the avocado industry and in the apple and pear industry. So it may be, if you're in those commodities, it's certainly worth having a look for those reports. And the other thing to keep in mind is that regional natural resource management groups may have done customised climate analysis for their region, and that may provide useful information to growers as well if you can access that. So the third part of reassessing climate risk in a horticultural business is to have a look again at the seasonal forecasts that are now becoming available through places like the Bureau of Met. The atmospheric modelling systems that the Bureau uses are improving all the time, and a lot of growers are saying that the seasonal outlooks and the sort of longer term seasonal forecast information that's available through the Bureau is becoming more accurate and is becoming much more useful as a management tool. On the Bureau of Met website, you'll be able to find seasonal outlooks that will cover issues around temperature, rainfall and cyclones, and I've got some information there on the slide about where you can find that information on their website. There's a lot more online resources available too around seasonal forecast information and weather monitoring. There's an information sheet that's available on the GrowCom website that will run through what sort of information you can get from things like the weekly tropical climate note, or the ENSO wrap-up that I think comes out every month, the Climate Kelpie. Growers can actually tap into things like POAMA, which is the Predictive Ocean Atmosphere Model for Australia. That's the model that BOM uses for a lot of its forecasting, and growers can actually be trained in how to use it, I've been told. So if you're really interested in getting right into a deeper level of accessing climate information and developing your own sort of customised forecasting and outlook information, that is something that you could possibly look into as well. Okay, so if you can follow that process and check back in on your assumptions about what the historical exposure to climate risks has been in your business, if you can really be looking closely at what the climate projections and forecasts are looking like, that will help you develop a more revised, refined climate risk assessment for your farm business. This will really give you a much clearer picture of the sorts of risks and the sorts of weather issues that you need to be able to build into your disaster risk management strategies. So that just wraps up this webinar, and the next one to have a look at is the one that deals with the prevent step of the prevent, prepare, respond and recover framework for improving your disaster risk management for your horticultural business. We'll look forward to seeing you in that one.